On August 29th to 30th, Ukraine targeted Russian cities, striking critical energy infrastructure and causing chaos.
Welcome to our video. Today, the news we are bringing you is not just about clashes on the front lines. It is the story of a war carried into Russia's own cities, into the heart of the nation. On the night of August 29th to 30th, Ukraine conducted a series of simultaneous operations that will go down in history. The refinery in Krasnodar, the Syzran Refinery in Samara, the pump station in Bryansk, and the Alexin chemical plant in Tula. All of them became Ukraine's targets on the same night. Drones exploding in the sky, flames rising above the cities, explosions echoing in areas where millions live. In a single night, Russian cities were transformed into hell in ways the Kremlin could never have imagined. And these attacks did not only hit the facilities. While cutting off Russia's energy arteries, they also pushed Russian citizens' patience with the Kremlin government to the limit. Protest calls spreading on social media, rumors of panic-induced migration, a new reality that the Kremlin tried to silence with censorship. Dear viewers, get ready, because what you are about to hear will reveal not just an operation, but the behind-the-scenes of a war carried straight into the heart of a nation. Ukraine is no longer fighting only on the front lines. It is changing the course of war even in Russia's most protected cities, in the shadow of the Kremlin. The nights of August 29th to 30th. What began as an ordinary night for Russia turned into a nightmare that will enter history books within a few hours. Because Ukraine launched a simultaneous strategic attack on an unprecedented scale, and the target was not only the front lines, it was directly Russia's heart, its most critical infrastructure. The first explosions were heard in the Krasnodar region near the Black Sea. This was a massive refinery supplying fuel directly to the Russian army, with an annual processing capacity of 3 million tons. At midnight, Ukraine's long-range drones silently approached the facility. Minutes later, the first explosion occurred. The refinery's processing units and fuel tanks detonated one after another. Flames rose dozens of meters, turning the sky into daylight. Russian fire brigades struggled for hours, but could not bring the facility under control. This blow in Krasnodar was not just about hitting a facility. It meant cutting off the front line's fuel supply to the Russian army. While Krasnodar burned, Ukraine's drones turned toward the Syzran Refinery in Samara the same night. This facility was one of Russia's largest, with a capacity of 8.5 million tons per year. And take note, Ukraine had struck it before, but this time, the attack was stronger. Explosions rang out consecutively at midnight. The processing units caught fire. Flames reached 50 meters high. Residents of Samara captured the crimson sky rising from kilometers away. The impact of the attack went beyond halting the refinery. Flights in the region were cancelled. Train services experienced major delays. Internet and communication restrictions were imposed. Another target was in the Bryansk region, closer to the Ukrainian border. The massive pump station here was one of the most critical logistics centers, transporting fuel to the front lines. With an annual capacity of 10.5 million tons, this line fueled the Russian army's tanks, armored vehicles, and trucks. On the morning of August 29th, Ukraine's unmanned systems went into action. The attack on the station directly targeted the storage units. Within minutes, diesel-filled tanks exploded, and fires spread uncontrollably. The sound of the blasts was heard tens of kilometers away. Result: the Russian army's fuel shipments to the front lines were locked down. One of the most dramatic attacks also took place in Tula, near Moscow, at the Alexin chemical plant. This was an underground facility storing nitrocellulose-based propellant powders used in ammunition manufacturing. Ukrainian intelligence had monitored these depots for a long time, waiting for the right moment. On the night of August 30th, the attack occurred. The first explosions tore apart the depot entrances. Then, the stockpiled propellants detonated. Underground blasts sent a massive fire column to the surface. The heart of the Kremlin's ammunition production went up in flames in a single night. 21% of Russia's total fuel processing capacity was put out of action. Tens of thousands of tons of fuel storage burned. Flights were cancelled, trains stopped, and the internet was cut off. Russia's energy infrastructure collapsed one after another, like a domino chain. These operations did not only strike refineries. In Krasnodar, Samara, Bryansk, and Tula, civilians had to wake up at dawn to the sound of explosions. Flames rising in the sky, rumors spreading on the streets, protest calls on social media. Russian cities were transformed into hell in a single night. Rumors of leaving the cities circulated among the population. Small but notable anti-war protests were recorded. The Kremlin tried to suppress information by increasing censorship with security forces. But the reality was this: war was no longer only on the front lines, it was now happening in Russia's own cities. The simultaneous operations of Ukraine on the nights of August 29th to 30th did not only hit refineries, pump stations, and ammunition depots. The main impact was experienced in the minds of millions of Russian citizens living in the shadow of the explosions. Because these attacks reminded everyone that the war was no longer only on the front lines, but right in the middle of cities. In Krasnodar, crimson flames covering the sky were visible from kilometers away. In Samara, explosions in the middle of the night forced people into the streets. Rumors spread in Bryansk that tanks and railway lines had been knocked out by the blasts. In Tula, in Alexin, just 150 kilometers from Moscow, the detonation fueled the fear that even the capital is no longer safe. These images spread to social media from independent sources despite the Kremlin's propaganda filters. Even Russia's deepest cities saw that they were within Ukraine's reach. After the attacks, messages rapidly circulating on social media were striking. This war is not for us. Billions to the front lines, we are condemned to darkness and fire. Small-scale anti-war protests appeared in Moscow and St. Petersburg. In Bryansk and Samara, some of the population began preparing to flee. Train stations became crowded. The Kremlin resorted to its usual methods to suppress these developments. Security forces dispersed protests. Roskomnadzor blocked social media posts. State TV broadcast the lie that the fires were caused by technical malfunctions. But there was a problem. People who had seen the explosions and flames firsthand no longer believed these lies. For a long time, the Russian people were told that the war is only on Ukrainian soil. But on the nights of August 29th to 30th, this tale was shattered. Now everyone saw the reality. The war had moved into Russia's own cities. This perception was the Kremlin's greatest fear. Losses on the front lines could be hidden, but burning refineries, cancelled flights, and halted trains in their own cities could not be concealed. This panic and these protests were not only observed within Russia, but carefully watched worldwide. Western capitals drew the conclusion: Ukraine is not only targeting military objectives, but can also put pressure on the Kremlin's domestic audience. Putin is now losing credibility not only on the front lines, but also in the eyes of his own people. Dear viewers, while fires continued in Russian cities and the population turned to panic-driven protests, a different war was unfolding in the skies. Because the same night, Russia launched one of the largest air attacks ever against Ukraine, and yet again, failed. Russia launched its largest air operation to date in an attempt to force Ukraine into submission from the skies, and the target was clear: to destroy Ukraine's air defenses and create a massive collapse. From Kursk, Bryansk, Orel, Milerovo, Saratov, to Black Sea bases, Russia's entire western front was mobilized. 537 Shahed-type attack drones were launched. Decoys were added to deceive radars. 8 Iskander ballistic missiles were fired from Rostov and Krasnodar. From Saratov and occupied regions, 37 more missiles were launched. Kh-101, Kalibr, Iskander K, Ka-59. In total, 582 separate threats appeared in Ukrainian airspace. This was the operation Russia announced as the second largest air attack of the war. But Ukraine was prepared. Air defense centers activated within minutes. Radar systems marked all targets. Patriot batteries shot down missiles at long range. Iris-T and NASAMS intercepted drones at medium range. Electronic warfare teams blinded and diverted the Shaheds. Mobile fire groups struck targets attempting low-altitude intrusion with artillery. Result: Ukraine's air defense worked flawlessly like a perfectly coordinated orchestra. 510 UAVs were either shot down or disabled through electronic warfare. 38 missiles were destroyed mid-air. Only a few targets were hit, and even those did not create any strategic loss. Russia's plan to invade Ukraine's skies was shredded within minutes by Ukraine's defense network. This was not just a defense, it was also a psychological demonstration, a message to the world that read, "Ukraine now has the capacity to repel even Russia's largest attacks." The effectiveness of Western systems, such as Patriot, IR, IST, and NASAMS, was proven. Russia's overwhelming power image collapsed. That night, two pictures unfolded simultaneously. Russian cities burned in explosions, while in Ukrainian skies, Russia's largest assault ended in collapse. And this picture sent a clear message to the world. Russia is no longer dominant in the skies, nor safe in its own cities. Ukraine's victory in the skies gained even greater significance when combined with its resistance on the front lines, because at the same time, Russia had amassed 100,000 troops at the Pokrovsk front. But the outcome there was also a disappointment for the Kremlin. Just as Russia's largest aerial assault ended in collapse, the Kremlin's massive ground army faced the same fate. The war continues relentlessly, not only in the skies, but along the front lines. And all summer, Russia concentrated its forces on the Pokrovsk front, believing it could change the course of the war. Moscow's strategy was clear: capture Pokrovsk, then take Chasiv Yar and Toretsk, and finally reach the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk line. Controlling this line would mean cutting the heart of Donbass. The Kremlin believed in this plan so much that it concentrated 100,000 troops there over the summer. Tanks, artillery units, armored convoys. The Kremlin declared this front the turning point of the war. But Ukraine did not retreat against this massive army. Trenches were reinforced, minefields laid. Sniper teams slowed the Russian advance. Artillery batteries, with HIMARS support, continuously pressured Russian units. UAVs marked positions, tracking every movement of Russian tanks and infantry in real time. The result? Pokrovsk did not fall. Chasiv Yar was not captured. Toretsk continued to resist. This picture carried a very clear message to the world. Russia's numerical superiority cannot break Ukraine's resistance. The Kremlin's superpower image is cracking. Ukraine resists not only in the skies but also on the ground with a steel-like will. The Pokrovsk front, once a dream of rapid victory for Russia, has become a legendary symbol of resistance for Ukraine. While Ukraine resists so strongly on the front lines, it is also intelligently using modern technology in the field. And one of the most striking examples of these modern warfare tactics occurred on the Lyman front. A small FPV drone used by Signum disabled a multi-million-dollar Russian artillery piece in seconds. At Pokrovsk, Ukraine resisted massive armies with iron-like determination, but at the same time, another front that determines the future of warfare was opening, the technology front. And one of the most striking examples of this new era was recorded in the Lyman region. For weeks, Russia had been striking Ukrainian positions on the Lyman front with Msta-B artillery. These heavy guns aimed to wear down Ukrainian defenses through continuous bombardment from kilometers away. But the Signum unit, attached to the 53rd Mechanized Brigade, decided to nullify this advantage. The target, a Russian Msta-B artillery piece. The vehicle was camouflaged, but it did not escape Signum's eye. The Signum team prepared an FPV, first-person view, drone costing only a few $100s. A special explosive was attached to the drone's tip. The operator put on their goggles and began observing the field through the drone's camera. Then the moment came. The quietly ascending drone glided at low altitude toward the Russian position. An Msta-B artillery piece costs millions of dollars. The FPV drone used by Signum cost only a few $100s. The result? Ukraine disabled Russia's heavy weapon in seconds with a low-cost technology. The direction of modern warfare is no longer determined by expensive tanks or large artillery. It is determined by creativity and technology. Dear viewers, in these days when Ukraine turned Russian cities into hell, resisted 100,000 troops on the front lines, and shot down over 500 UAVs in the sky, a remarkable development also took place on the Western Front. Senior White House officials sharply warned some European capitals. According to reports, patience was running out in Washington. Europeans are prolonging this war unnecessarily, keeping Ukraine busy with unrealistic expectations. But they should not try to make America pay the bill. These words clearly reflected the US's core approach. We want to end this war. Officials speaking to Axios also noted that the US continues to pressure Moscow. However, some European leaders' "let's wait and get a better deal" approach has caused dissatisfaction in Washington. One official said, "Europe must not make moves that give the Kremlin more time. That would turn a near victory into a loss." The US message was clear: no allowance for Russia to prolong the war. These developments show that, even amid internal debates in the West, Washington's fundamental stance has not changed. The US stands with Ukraine. Moscow is not allowed to prolong the war or create cracks in the West. Pressure on Moscow will continue both at the negotiating table and on the battlefield. Dear viewers, here the big picture becomes clear. The US continues its support for Ukraine decisively, sending the message to the Kremlin: if you don't step back, you will be isolated. And this completely shatters Russia's hopes of prolonging the war to its advantage. Now we have seen the full picture. The events of the night of August 29th to 30th show that this war reached a breaking point, not only on the front lines, but also in the skies, in cities, and in international diplomacy. In Russian cities, from Krasnodar to Samara, from Bryansk to Tula, explosions and fires erupted. Refineries, pumping stations, and ammunition depots were engulfed in flames. 21% of Russia's energy capacity was disabled. Citizens poured into the streets in panic. Calls for protests rose, and the Kremlin resorted to censorship. The result: the war has now reached the heart of Russia itself. Dear viewers, here is the full picture. Russian cities were engulfed in flames. Russia's sky plan collapsed. On the front lines, the Kremlin got stuck in the mud. Ukraine gained technological superiority. On the international stage, the US's determined support cornered the Kremlin. There is now a reality everyone can see. The more Russia attacks, the stronger Ukraine becomes. And this strength is felt not only on the front lines, but in the skies, in the heart of the Kremlin, and even at the international diplomacy table. Additionally, we would like to share with you Ukraine's great victory. Ukraine has liberated many regions from Russian occupation. The Ukrainian flag now proudly flies in this city, symbolizing triumph. Let's first turn to the Eastern Front. The Kupiansk line was a point where Russia concentrated all its strength for months, while Ukraine regarded it as a strategic fortress to demonstrate its defensive resilience. The Kremlin launched hundreds of guided bombs and rocket attacks to capture the area, applying immense pressure with FPV drones. Their plan was clear: to create a complete ring of fire around Kupiansk and force Ukrainian troops to withdraw. But the Ukrainian army resisted this plan and changed the course of the war through superior intelligence and coordination. On the morning of August 29th, Ukrainian forces completely ended the Russian occupation in the village of Mern. This village, located on the strategic route to Kupiansk, was a critical transit point and had been used by Russia as an advanced headquarters. After weeks of preparation, the Ukrainian army cleared the area with uninterrupted reconnaissance flights, precision artillery strikes, and electronic warfare support. The spokesperson for the Dnipro Operational Strategic Group, Viktor Trehubov, summarized the victory in a single sentence. Mern is now under Ukraine's control. This sentence marked not just the liberation of a village, but the shift of a strategic equation. Behind this victory lies a great success in technology and intelligence. Real-time satellite data provided by the West and Ukraine's own electronic jamming systems revealed the locations of Russia's artillery batteries one by one. HIMARS systems struck these targets with pinpoint accuracy, dismantling Russia's pressure around Kupiansk. Ukrainian troops did not just attack, they simultaneously dug trenches, laid minefields, and neutralized Russian drones with electronic warfare. This was proof that in modern warfare, a nation can stand out not only through manpower, but also through technological and intelligence superiority. This city became a defensive fortress, transformed into a strategic labyrinth by Ukrainian soldiers. Abandoned factories and narrow streets turned into a battlefield that favored Ukrainian special forces. The liberation of Mern revealed that Ukraine was not merely defending itself, but implementing a strategy to reclaim every occupied point one by one. And now we turn to the west of Donetsk. Because here, Ukraine not only reclaimed 3 villages, but also collapsed the defensive line Russia had fortified for months, all in a single night: Mikhailivka, Zelenikai, and Vadmirivka. These villages, which may appear as small dots on the map, were key elements of Russia's main defense chain in the Donetsk region. With months of intelligence efforts, the Ukrainian General Staff identified the vulnerabilities in this line. Satellite imagery, radio traffic, and logistic movement analyses revealed that Russia's so-called strong defense in this region had significant weaknesses. At midnight, Ukraine's electronic warfare units disrupted Russian communication networks, while HIMARS batteries silenced Russian artillery. Bayraktar TB-2 drones marked armored vehicles one by one, and FPV kamikaze drones destroyed the targets systematically. Ukrainian infantry infiltrated Mikhailivka during a night operation, and by dawn, the Ukrainian flag was flying there. This image was not only a military success for Ukraine, but also tangible proof of moral superiority. Following this, Zelenikai and Vadmirivka also came under Ukrainian control on the same night. The fall of these villages crippled Russia's logistical network and rendered its attack plans toward Pokrovsk obsolete. Western analysts described this operation as a textbook case of modern warfare, because here, Ukraine collapsed Russia's defensive chain in a domino effect by flawlessly combining Western technology with its own battlefield innovations. But the most critical turning point of the war occurred on the Baltic coast. On the night of August 28th, the drone strike launched by Ukraine on the Ust-Luga port, supported by electronic warfare, became a breaking point for the Kremlin. This port was Russia's main hub for energy exports to Europe and Asia, and was also the heart of the shadow trade network established by Moscow to bypass Western sanctions. Ukraine halted the economic heartbeat of Russia in a single night. Kamikaze drones exploited radar blind spots to strike the port's critical cryogenic fractionation unit. The first explosion lit up the Baltic coast, and in the second wave, fuel depots were targeted. Satellite images and videos on social media showed massive pillars of fire rising into the sky, and thick black smoke visible from kilometers away. These visuals became the symbol of how Russia's image as an energy giant collapsed in a single night. With drones worth only thousands of dollars, Ukraine inflicted billions of dollars worth of damage on Russia. The impact of this attack was not just economic, it triggered a psychological shockwave. When the people of Moscow woke up in the morning, train stations and airports were packed. People lined up to leave the city, and bus tickets were sold out days in advance. The capital is safe propaganda the Kremlin had been pushing for years was utterly shattered. Now, the Russian people were forced to accept that the war had reached their own soil. This was clear evidence that Ukraine had also gained superiority in psychological warfare. When the drone strike on Ust-Luga port is combined with the operation against the Syzran Refinery, it resulted in a major rupture in Russia's energy production and trade. According to Western experts, these attacks directly affect Moscow's war funding, weakening the flow of fuel and ammunition to the front. Ukraine has now established strategic superiority not only on the battlefield, but also deep within Russian territory. Behind this success lies not only Ukraine's determination, but also the strategic support of the West. The HIMARS missiles and Patriot air defense systems provided by the United States, as well as extensive support from Europe, have given Kyiv a modern warfare capability. At this point, Ukraine is no longer just a country defending its own land. It is a power that is dismantling the Kremlin's strategic plans. Occupied territories are being liberated one by one. Russia's prestige projects are being targeted, and Moscow is now seeing the true meaning of war. This war is not only being fought on the front lines, it is being waged in the heart of Moscow, on the Baltic coasts, and in the strategic chambers of the Kremlin. So, what do you think? Could these operations completely halt Russia's offensive strategy? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Don't forget to like our video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. We will continue to bring you all developments and everything related to the war in Ukraine. We wish you days filled with peace. Goodbye.